This case takes place in the United States of America. In our youth, we are taught three main rules to stay safe from strangers. They were: number 1, don't talk to a stranger, be that in person or online. 2, never get into a vehicle with a stranger. And 3, don't take sweets from a stranger. However, as adults, we often abandon the wisdom imparted to us in our youth. Over the past decade, the gig economy has surged with the rise of services like Uber and Deliveroo. These platforms require users to interact with complete strangers through applications on their phones. With Uber, you either get into a stranger's car or let a stranger into yours. Christina Spicuzza, known affectionately as Christy, was born on the 11th of February 1983 to her parents Joseph and Cindy. Christy was raised in Pennsylvania, and she grew up alongside her three brothers, Joseph, Raphael, Michael, and her sister Chantel. From a young age, Christy developed a passion for arts and crafts and the Bible. She was a devoted Christian. She was described as kind, warm, and friendly, known for her radiant smile that could light up any room. Christy was a self-proclaimed extrovert who loved working in a team and welcomed challenges, relishing the satisfaction of completing a difficult task. Her professional journey began as a sleep technician at the Jefferson Regional Medical Center from 2007 to 2008. She then moved on to work alongside doctors and scientists, conducting sleep experiments and writing reports. But by 2013, Christy embraced the role of a stay-at-home mum, and over the following years she had 4 children: Andrea, Drew, Scotty, and Tori. By the age of 38, Christy was engaged to her fiancé, Brandon Marto, and the couple lived in Turtle Creek. As her children grew more independent, Christy began working a few shifts as an Uber driver. This role offered her the flexibility she needed, while allowing her to contribute financially to her family. But tragically for Christy and her family, on the 10th of February 2022, everything was about to change. All it took was the wrong customer at the wrong time. This customer was 24-year-old Calvin Anthony Crew. Calvin remains a largely elusive figure. There is limited information about his early life and background. However, his criminal rap sheet and current run-ins with the law paint a picture of what we know so far. Calvin has a history of juvenile delinquency and was labelled an adjudicated delinquent for a series of crimes committed during his youth. These were various charges such as theft and robbery from the age of just 14 years old. This resulted in the revocation of his rights to own firearms. However, on the 10th of December 2020, the Northern Regional Police Department arrested him in Marshall Township, Pennsylvania. He faced charges related to the unauthorized sale and transfer of a firearm, along with a misdemeanor for unsworn falsification. This means making a statement with the full knowledge that it is completely false. Although Calvin was released on a form of bail, with the incentive to come back to court at a later date, but he was never brought to court and convicted for his crimes according to adult criminal records, meaning that Calvin Anthony Crew was still at large in the Pitcairn area of Pennsylvania. On the 9th of February 2020, Christy Spicuzza had just said her goodbyes to her family before starting her Uber shift. Christy got into her Nissan car, which she rented from the Uber Vehicle Marketplace program, and right away, her first request for the night came through. This request was from Calvin's girlfriend, Tanea Mullen, aged 22. Christy then drove over to 139 Brinton Road in Pitcairn to pick up her client at 9:14 p.m. She was expecting to drop Tanea off in Penn Hills, Pennsylvania, but as captured on her dashcam, a hooded man dressed in dark clothing and a black face mask entered the car. This was Calvin. Christy very politely greeted him as he entered the car. However, Calvin just mumbled words which were hard to make out. Christy understood that her client wasn't much of a talker, so she didn't say anything again until 9:24 p.m, when she asked him how his day had been. His only reply was, "That's good." A few more minutes would pass by, and at 9:33 p.m, they arrived at the destination and the Uber journey was terminated. But instead of leaving the vehicle, Calvin repositioned himself to the rear left seat of the car directly behind Christy, and this was when he leaned forward with his left hand and grabbed her by the hair. Simultaneously, he raised a 9mm pistol in his right hand and pointed it to the back of her skull. In complete shock, Christy took her right hand off the wheel and curiously felt what the client had pointed into the back of her head. When she felt the gun, her response was, "What are you doing?" To which Calvin responded by saying, "This is a gun, keep driving." Christy replies by saying,
"What are you doing? Please stop.
Drive the car, miss.
I have 4 kids, what are you doing?"
She said this so candidly and calmly that it makes for a shocking watch knowing her fate. Calvin has no regard for what she is saying. He simply states that he has a family too. Calvin tells her to keep driving and that if she is compliant, nothing bad will happen to her. Over the next hour, Christy tried to reason with him over and over again. All the while, Calvin pulled her phone and dashcam from the front and started transferring money from banking apps such as Venmo, Dollar Bank, PayPal, and Square. Before the dashcam shut off, Christy began begging and pleading with him to stop the robbery, but this did not deter Calvin. According to the police, Calvin could not retrieve any funds from Christy's accounts. In response, he asked Christy to pull over to the side of the road down Rosecrest Drive in Monroeville. There, he walked her up a slope in a wooded area and shot Christy in the back of the head. Calvin Anthony Crew had spent an hour with Christy, a mother of 4 and a great woman. He listened to her beg and plead for her life and for her family's sake, but Calvin showed no humanity, no remorse for putting her through that level of stress. Instead, he senselessly put a bullet in the back of her head, taking her life and her children's mother. Calvin fled the scene in Christy's car, and he visited his cousin's house in East Pittsburgh before returning home to his girlfriend. Christy, of course, didn't return home that night. Not knowing where Christy was, her fiancé and children began to worry, and the police were informed of her disappearance in the early hours of the following day. The day after this, her car was found on 4th Street in Pitcairn, with no dash camera and her purse still left in the vehicle. When her fiancé Brandon found out this information, it invoked pure dread, as he knew that she never went anywhere without her purse. Only hours later, an Amazon delivery driver called the authorities and reported that he had found a deceased female lying in the woods near Rosecrest Drive. The police then searched the area for her dashcam. They found it along a chain-link fence less than a mile away from where Christy's body was found. The police managed to play the SSD memory card from within the dashcam, and they uncovered the horrifying hour leading up to her death. This gave the police a timestamp so they could cross-reference her mobile phone activity and Uber activity log. Sure enough, the police discovered the last client was Tanea Mullen. However, with the dashcam footage, they knew the perpetrator was male, so it didn't take long for the link to be made from Tanea to Calvin, and he was arrested. Calvin was charged with criminal homicide, robbery of a motor vehicle, and carrying a firearm without a license. Questions arose as to how Calvin got a gun, and why was it his girlfriend who called for the Uber. It was found that Calvin's girlfriend Tanea was at least suspicious of Calvin's movements, and even texted him saying, "Whatever you are doing tonight, be careful. I am not going to jail if we get caught." So, was this premeditated, and was Tanea in on it? So far, she has not been charged with any crimes concerning Christy's murder, and Calvin was able to acquire the gun himself. Sadly for the family, court proceedings against Calvin have faced significant delays. The prosecution team are seeking the death penalty. Calvin's defense have argued that the dashcam footage should be inadmissible due to Pennsylvania's two-party consent rule, claiming that Christy did not obtain Crew's permission to record him, thus violating the wiretap statute. However, if a person is aware of being recorded and does not object to it, it is generally considered implied consent. Prosecutors maintain that Calvin was aware of the dashcam, as it had a rear-facing screen showing the recording, and he grabbed the device near the end of the footage. The motion to suppress the video was seen as an attempt by the defense to interfere with justice. The trial remains pending, but some sources say the jury selection was scheduled for the 8th of July 2024. In a separate legal case, Cindy Spicuzza, Christy's mother, filed a lawsuit against Uber on the 7th of September 2023. The case has moved to arbitration. The lawsuit argues that Uber failed to provide substantial safety measures for its drivers, did not equip Christy with passenger verification data, and as they penalized drivers for ejecting riders. Christy Spicuzza believes that simple measures such as screening out convicted criminals or allowing drivers to cancel any suspicious rides without any penalties could enhance driver safety and could have possibly prevented the murder of Christy Spicuzza. This case takes place in the United States of America. The USA is a nation celebrated as the land of opportunity and freedom. Whilst many work tirelessly to achieve their goals, there are those who resort to unscrupulous tactics to gain an unfair advantage. Scammers. Scammers stand out for their particularly insidious and ruthless methods. They often prey on society's most vulnerable, but can also employ a sophisticated array of manipulation and deception techniques that can be difficult to detect. Unfortunately, this case starts with the harassment and scamming of a man, which, on the 25th of March 2024, tragically led to the death of a female Uber driver. William Brock was an 81-year-old pensioner residing on Clifton Road in South Charleston, Ohio. In the weeks leading up to the 25th of March, William found himself entangled in a relentless scam orchestrated by an unknown caller. This scammer phoned William several times a day, posing as various characters in a calculated effort to deceive him. This scammer claimed to know William's nephew, asserting that the nephew was currently incarcerated following a car accident. It became apparent that William was the target of a grandparent scam, a fraudulent scheme designed to exploit elderly individuals by claiming that a younger relative is in dire trouble. These scams often create confusion and panic, leading to the victims handing over large sums of money. The scammers' characters ranged from bail officers to prison guards, initially requesting £12,000 for the nephew's bail. William, however, became suspicious when he noticed that despite the different names, the voices of the supposed officials sounded exactly the same. He realized that this was a scam, and he refused to pay the $12,000. In response, the scammer escalated his tactics. He adopted a more threatening demeanor. Now posing as a prison guard, he menacingly demanded ransom money, claiming that he would harm William's nephew if the money was not paid. Despite their escalating threats, William continued to resist the scammer's demands. However, the relentless calls and menacing threats took their toll. The scammer proposed sending someone to collect the money in person if William agreed to pay. For reasons that remain unclear, William agreed to this arrangement. It is speculated that he might have believed that meeting the collector in person would provide an opportunity to gather information about the scammer. He could confront them or even exact his own form of justice. Following the scammer's instructions, William was told to withdraw $12,000 and place it in a package for collection. Little did William know, the scammer had actually hired Loletha Hall, a 61-year-old Uber driver, to unwittingly pick up the package from William's home, thus placing a very innocent bystander into the sights of a deeply distressed individual. Loletha Hall was born on the 21st of February 1963 in Columbus, Ohio, to her parents Oscar Lee Jr. and Janet. Loletha had a love for gardening, and she attended Ohio State University, majoring in horticulture. She had two sisters with whom she shared a close and affectionate relationship with. She was a real family woman. In 1991, she gave birth to her son Mario, and she went on to start her own successful janitorial service business. However, later in life, she retired from her professional career and volunteered in the outreach ministry at her local church. She would spend her time gardening, fishing, cooking, and baking, but in between all of this, she would put some hours in as an Uber driver. This suited Loletha, as she was struggling with some physical ailments which greatly affected her mobility. On the 25th of March 2024, Loletha started a shift working for Uber. At some point before 11 AM, she saw on the app that a job had come through for parcel collection. She accepted and headed to the suburban area of South Charleston to William Brock's house. She headed there in her SUV, fitted with an operating dashcam. When she arrived, she waited outside for a while on the property's drive, but nobody came out to give her a package. So she got out of her vehicle and made her way to the door of William's home. William then came out of the home brandishing an 8-shot 22 caliber revolver. He pointed the weapon at her and asked who had been making the threatening calls. William clearly thought that Loletha was in on this scam and was part of the group harassing and threatening him. It was clear that William was not looking for a normal or civilized conversation. Was he being overly cautious and defensive, or was he on the attack? Loletha swiftly retreated, feeling like her life was under threat. She went directly to the driver's side door, but William followed her. She repeatedly shouted for help and threatened to call 911 as she clutched her phone, but William held her at gunpoint and said that she wasn't leaving, not until he had answers. Loletha said that she was here to pick up a parcel, and that was all. William replied, "I know what you're after." The two began to scuffle just out of the shot of the dashcam. This bizarre and shocking heated situation soon escalated when William demanded Loletha's mobile phone. Loletha refused. It was at this point that William released a bullet from the chamber of the revolver. The target was Loletha's leg. Loletha fell to the ground. The situation had now descended into pure chaos. Loletha began bleeding from her leg. William asked her who her boss was and who she worked for. Loletha quickly pointed to the Uber logo on her car and said Uber. She pleaded with him to look at the logo, but William was in a crazed disposition. He had no interest in what Loletha was saying. He responded with, "I'll shoot you in the head next time if you don't give me your phone." All Loletha could do was beg William not to shoot. She begged him to just talk, but this was to no avail. The 81-year-old stood over Loletha and unloaded another bullet into her shoulder and a final bullet into her head.
Stop. Stop. Or I'll call 911. Stop. Yeah, phone. Stop. Stop. You're there. Help! 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 You're on phone. Help! I'll shoot the other way. Help! Help! Come on, get out. Help! Sir! Yeah. I'm gonna pick up a package. Yes, yeah, I know what you're after. You're after the... Help! Help!
William immediately called 911 and a responder arrived on site in a good time. Unfortunately, it was too late for Loletha and she passed away at the hospital soon after the incident. Detective Cruz arrived on the scene. He took a statement from William on the spot, who explained everything. It was obvious that William was telling the truth about the scammer and the parcel. William gave the $12,000 package to the detective. When Detective Cruz was talking to William, William's phone began to ring. It was the scammer. Detective Cruz answered the phone. He said, "May I ask, who am I talking to?" The scammer responded, "Yes, this is the officer speaking." Detective Cruz then asked, "Okay, what officer?" The scammer then responded by saying, "You are going to be in big trouble." Detective Cruz then asked the scammer if he knew the woman who was sent over to William's house. The scammer said that he did.
Yeah, this is the officer speaking.
Okay, what officer?
Yes,
No, I need to know what officer, sir.
you're gonna be in trouble.
Okay, let me ask you this. The female you sent over here, you know who she is?
Yes, I do.
However, this was a lie. Detective Cruz then explained that there had been an accident involving Loletha, and then the scammer ended the call. Detectives would later try and track the call, however it is suggested that the scammer used a burner phone, and it was tracked in Canada. On the 17th of April 2024, William stood in front of a judge charged with kidnap and the murder of Loletha Hall. William pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. He paid a bail bond of $200,000 and was released from jail pending his preliminary hearing, which was set on the 22nd of April at 1:15 p.m. No further information has been published on this case, but it is known that the authorities are trying to find the scammer, who may face felony murder charges. For William, he will likely be convicted due to his aggression towards a defenseless, non-aggressive victim, despite any other context. In a statement, William claimed that he felt under threat and that it looked likely that Loletha reached for a weapon, but at the moment, it doesn't look like there is any evidence to suggest this. If William could have just restrained himself and had the conversation that Loletha begged for, perhaps this case would have had a very different outcome.